Actually, I'm going to broadcast now. So, people who are not part of the panel, please hide your video.
Hey, Amy. Can you tell how many people are, oh, I can see it. Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Sorry. We're really excited to get to spend the next hour and a half with all of you, getting to share some information about some really great groups and organizations from around the state that are doing some really critical work in racial justice work. So yeah, so before we jump into hearing from some of our amazing panelists, I'm just gonna do some brief housekeeping. Just to start, I want to give folks a brief overview of the Peace and Justice Center. We're the lead organization hosting this event tonight. We are a statewide nonprofit. We do work in the areas of fair trade, racial justice, and peace and nonviolent education. And we do that through educational workshops, through internships, through volunteer opportunities, and through doing events like this, whether it's digitally or through something like our social justice activist symposium that we've hosted in the past. And so we are really excited to get to host this event tonight and kind of bring something that we've done in the past that's been really meaningful to people to a digital platform in a time where we obviously can't all be together. And we will be sharing a little bit more information about how you can get involved in our work later on, so I won't bog you down too much with too much information up front. But we will be throughout this monitoring the chat section. So if you want to share your thoughts or talk with other participants throughout this, we definitely encourage you to. If you have any questions about any kind of technical stuff, like if there are any issues with sound or video, please feel free to pop that into the chat function. There also is a Q&A section. After we hear from all of the panelists, there will be time for you to ask questions to the different panelists that we'll be hearing from. So if you have specific questions for those groups that you would like answered, pop those into the Q&A section. We will be only taking questions from there. So if you have any burning questions, please feel free to put them there. We are streaming also right now on Facebook and YouTube. We are unfortunately not able to pull questions from there. We'll only be taking questions from the participants that are with us on Zoom. So we apologize to folks that are watching from Facebook or from YouTube. But if you have any questions, you can still feel free to pop them into the comments there, and we will come back and answer them at a later date, but unfortunately it's not anything we're able to integrate into the event tonight. And last but not least, actually no, I lied, two more things. So originally this event was promoted as being a 75-minute event, but we just had so many amazing organizations that wanted to be a part of this. And once we tallied everything up, we realized that we just had too much to fit into 75 minutes. So we're going to be extending this event into a 90-minute event. So we apologize that it might be taking up a little bit more of your time than anticipated, but we hope that you'll still stick around, especially to get to ask questions that you might have about how to get involved with some of the work that is being done with organizations. And lastly, to ensure that we keep this space safe, we will be monitoring the chat function. So if anybody is being unruly or causing any issues, we will be removing people from the Zoom call. So please just be sure to keep this space safe, because obviously we're in a time where tensions are really high and people, specifically people of color, are feeling really scared and being harmed by a lot of things, and we don't want this to be another space where that's happening. So we won't hesitate to remove you from the event if you are contributing to that kind of environment. Okay, so I think that that is all that I have. So next, I am so excited to introduce Harmony, who was one of the lead organizers on the protest that happened a few days ago in Burlington, which was a massive success. And so she's kind of get everybody pumped up and ready to go for this event. So Harmony, when you're ready, you can pop on in.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Harmony Edosomwan. I am a community activist and organizer and student activist as well. I am not affiliated with any organization, so whatever I say is on my accord. Just say that, just to know that. Okay, let's see. So we're living in really tense times. Cities are burning, folks, excuse me, sorry. Okay, we are living in really tense times. Cities are burning. Mr. Trump's response yesterday to the protest is really unnerving. Our right to protest and assemble is under attack. But don't fret. Although these are challenging times, they're good times. America is forced to look and face the racism and the outrage and hurt that a lot of people who have been oppressed since even the beginning or before the origins of this country has placed on Black folks and Black bodies. Vermont specifically is now forced to face the music. Don't let these green mountains and the beautiful summer that lasts for like 2 months mislead you. Racism, both passive and direct, persists right here in this state. Now, I want to talk a little bit about indirect racism that's found here in Vermont, which I've noticed, so I have family down south, and a lot of the times they walk around and they see things like Confederate flags, they see folks outwardly just, being racist. But in Vermont, you don't really see that here. Depending on which part you go, you may see a few Confederate flags, but I feel like the racism that generally represents or is seen in Vermont is passive and indirect racism. This may look like folks saying things like, oh, I'm colorblind, color doesn't matter, stuff like that. Or folks saying things like, oh, how can I be racist? Or how can Vermonters be racist? There's no Black people here. Once again, that's a part of the indirect racism, and that's also a part of the problem. Just because Black people aren't in the state in abundance doesn't mean that Black people that are here don't face racism, and two, that's erasure of the Black people that actually do live here, which is weird to me for you to have that mindset and mentality. And then also, when I say to those folks that say things like, there's no Black people here, how can we be racist? Have you ever thought why Vermont is so white? Vermont is white it wasn't done on accident. It wasn't done it's not because Vermont's cold. Black people live all over the world. There's some Black people that live in cold climates too. The weather is not the issue. Vermont is so white because of systemic racism. There are literally charters that said that Black folks cannot own land in Vermont. And some of these charters actually still exist to this day. However, of course, they're not being enforced today, but the fact that the charters are still there shows that that's unnerving. Even right there in South Burlington, that makes me feel weird. That makes me feel bad. And that's why Vermont's so white. Vermont's almost like a safe haven for white folks. It's the second whitest state in the country. And it's almost as white folks came and gathered in these northern parts to be away from Black people. So keep that in mind. Let's pop the bubble. There's a power in difference. There's power in diversity. It's time that we stop this weak mindset that Vermonters have that racism just doesn't happen here. Face the music. Let's actually talk about these things as well. Vermonters need to step up. It's not enough that you voted for Obama in 2008. It's not enough that you're a Bernie Sanders supporter. Even Bernie Sanders has said very problematic things towards Black people, which a lot of people don't really talk about, but is just not enough. It's not enough to go to protests. It's not enough to come to Zoom calls like this. We need to start confronting our family members. We need to start confronting our coworkers. We need to start confronting the racism that exists within ourselves. Well, not myself, but confront the racism that exists within yourself and understand that this is a real issue. Every white person is racist. You have to unlearn what you learned. Like, you're either a racist or a recovering racist. Everything in American culture points towards white supremacy. Everything in American culture teaches you that whiteness is superior. Everything in American culture teaches you that you're eccentric, that your life matters above everyone else. You can see it in the media, you can see it in music, you can see it in the news, you can see it in images propagated against people of color. Now it's time for you to unlearn those things. I feel like when it comes to things of race, a lot of white people were told that this is a hush-hush topic, that's taboo, you can't really talk about it. Don't mention someone's race, it's offensive. It's not. You can say the word Black people, you can say African American, you can say it's okay. Like, just face the music, face the racism that exists within you. If you don't have the mindset that you're either a racist or recovering racist, that's an issue. So read some books, listen to the panelists here today, and just start this action. We're in a really challenging time, but we're also in a really good time. And I truly believe that Vermont can be changed forever if the white people that are here now begin to act right now. But that's basically it. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone and welcome again. It means so much to see such an incredible turnout and to see how many people are truly dedicated to continuing the fight for change in Vermont. Just to explain a little bit more about what we'll be doing today, we're going to be hearing from a bunch of groups around Vermont with different missions and goals related to racial justice. Some groups offer their support, resources, and healing spaces for people of color, and other groups provide opportunities to combat racism. So we really wanted to organize this to lend our existing support to groups around the state that have been tackling these issues of racial injustice, and also to spread more awareness about the work that's already been achieved by them. Especially now in this moment, it's really important to shine a light on their work while racial justice has gained so much visibility, momentum, and traction in society. So with that being said, we're going to hear from 15 groups today. They're going to give us a brief overview of what they do and how you can get involved. And after those introductions, we're going to have about 20 minutes for a Q&A portion where you can ask more specific questions to any group you'd like about what they do and how you can take action. Then after, when we're complete with the panel, we're going to make sure to send out a follow-up email with a list of all the organizations that presented today and their contact information so you can start getting involved. And just to reiterate what Kina was talking about earlier, we have two functions at the bottom of the screen. One is for the Q&A, and we ask that you only put in questions that are for panelists in that one. Once again, the Q&A is only for questions for panelists. And the chat you can use for general logistical questions, tech issues, and just to use as a space to connect with other participants. So now we can move on to introducing the groups I'll be speaking today. First, we have Steffen Gillom representing Windham County and Rutland areas and NAACP. So he can take it from here. Thank you, everyone.
All right, let me unmute myself. Whoa, this camera's really close. Sorry about that. We'll just have to make do with what it is. So we were asked to come here and give an overview for about 3 minutes. So I'm going to try my best to stay underneath that 3-minute mark. First and foremost, I want to just put out there that we are the NAACP. There are 2 branches of the NAACP in Vermont. Luckily for everybody, and as we can see, there are young folks in the NAACP, right? Living out the dreams and all of that our ancestors wanted us to. I'm here representing Windham County and Rutland area NAACP, who actually make up the Vermont branches of the NAACP. Right now we only have 2. As far as the areas that we cover, we have what we call 6 game changers, which kind of govern exactly what we're looking at covering and what we actually do. So those 6 game changers are economic sustainability, which pretty much looks at how the resources around us are distributed and who they're meant for and who gets them. We know that marginalized folks are usually outside of that. Sorry, sounds coming through. The second is education, examining the intersection between race and one's educational experience, which, as we can see around the country, is needed. The third is public safety and criminal justice, which is self-explanatory, but it examines who gets justice and who pursues justice. And we examine all of those systems within that. And who gets a shorthand of justice. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out and help folks who have been shorthand get what they need. Of course, we also cover voting rights, which examines who actually gets access to voting privileges and rights, and health. And as we can see with the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on communities of color, we see why health is so important, right? So we fought pretty hard here with other groups as well to get data released for the African-American and other communities of color. So with that being said, how do we operate? Well, we operate on 4 different levels, right? We have our individual branches, which for me, I govern Windham County branch. Tabitha Polmore governs the Rutland area branch. And we spend, I'd say, about 60% of our time working within our own independent counties. Now, with that being said, we also cover things statewide. Tabitha is also a young president, and we really value collaboration. And so anything statewide, we work on that together, which has been wonderful. And I would say about 30% of our things are done working together, doing statewide policy work, statewide committee work, testifying, lobbying to a certain extent, the whole 9 yards. Also, regionally, we work regionally and we work nationally. So how do you get involved, right, as a member? Well, you can become a member, you can join a committee, you can attend events, such as our Freedom Fund dinner, or you can form a committee of your own if you have an interest. Contact your local branch, and if you're outside of our jurisdictions, you can still contact us and we can still help you get a committee formed and we'll figure it out. So with that being said, I'm right at my 3 minutes and I'm gonna stop talking. And if you have any other questions about what the NAACP does, let me know. And we've been around for 109 years and we will be around for 109 more if we need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Steffen. Next, we have Migrant Justice. We have Lupita, and her interpreter, his name is Marita. Thanks.
Thank you. Hola a todos, mi nombre es Telma. Soy parte de la comunidad migrante aquí en Vermont. Soy parte de Justicia Migrante.
Hello, everybody. My name is Telma. I'm part of the migrant community here in Vermont, and I'm part of Migrant Justice team.
Justicia Migrante somos una organización de base creada y liderada por trabajadores migrantes aquí en Vermont.
Migrant Justice is a grassroots organization led by dairy farm workers here in Vermont.
Queremos agradecer a todas y todas por dejarnos participar en esto, ¿verdad? Porque es bien importante para nosotros como comunidades que vivimos día a día todo esto del sistema, ¿verdad? Que nos oprime.
We want to thank you all for allowing us to be participating here today. It's really important that we are all here together during these times fighting this system that oppresses us.
Y tenemos, ¿verdad? Mucho en común. Ese sistema nos ha creado para a veces dividirnos para ganar, pero la realidad es que tenemos tanto en común para luchar. Nosotros como comunidad migrantes sabemos perfectamente que tenemos tantos problemas, ¿verdad? Y estamos aquí en eso, en respuesta de estar todos con eso de la unión.
So there are so many intersectionalities that we see. Our struggle is your struggle, and we have so many common things to keep fighting. And we are living in this system that tries to divide us, to try to keep us apart and to make us fight. But it's really important that we are all here together talking about these things.
Y por eso estamos aquí en solidaridad, ¿verdad? Por todos los levantamientos que han habido y en respuesta a todo eso, queremos decir que aquí estamos y que también nosotros tenemos una lucha y que también, ¿verdad? Estamos luchando con ese mismo sistema que nos está haciendo el camino tan difícil, esas desigualdades que estamos viendo día a día.
So we want to tell you that we are here in solidarity. We are here in solidarity with all the uprising in the Black community. We are here to tell you that we're going to fight together. We're going to be with you, fighting this system, fighting the oppression. We also have our own fight. We also have our struggle, and we are doing all this to fight for the whole community.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. I want to say that Migrant Justice has a mission, and our mission is under the human rights framework. We organize as a community, and our main mission is to empower and to raise the voices of the farm worker community here in Vermont. We are seeking for economic justice, working in collaboration with other organizations, with allies, with co-conspirators to seek collective solutions, because we know that this system hasn't been created for us, and that's why we need to keep on the fight. Thank you.
And just so everyone knows, we had Marita spotlighted because Lupita's internet connection is a little spotty, so she's not able to have video right now. Okay, and now let's move on to Black Lives Matter of Greater Burlington. We have Dia Brown speaking on behalf of them.
Howdy, y'all. Hopefully you can hear me well. I'm like moving right now. Always a fun time. So yeah. So a bit about BLM of Greater Burlington. Our mission is to see that the Greater Burlington area is transformed into a place where all Black people thrive bodily, socially, and economically. A bit about like logistics of us. So we're an unofficial chapter of the national and global Black Lives Matter movement, and we follow the same ethics as they do. And our mission is to organize poor Black folks and their natural allies and cultivate people's culture and model the beloved community in which we want to exist in and achieve our collective liberation, which is a lot of stuff. And how that really looks is like, there's Heart Work, which is our caucus meetings that happen weekly now online. And so there's the POC, People of Color Caucus, and the White Caucus of Collective Liberation. And so folks meet in those for what's referred to as heart work, which is work that is filling and healing. And what that can look like in practice is I literally was in the van moving my stuff around and was in this meeting and leading songs, and it was like a really good feeling. And there's legwork, which is stuff like our petition and kind of putting stuff out there. And we also have a coordinated action forum that we've created so that we can continue that legwork and coordinating people and mobilizing bodies. But then also there's headwork, which is focused on mobilizing the mind through collective study and watch parties. And so we create like this holistic community. And so, yeah, we've done a lot of different things lately. Y'all can check out like our Facebook and stuff like that. I don't want to like take up like too much time. I did not check what time I was at in the beginning of this. But yeah, we're really centered around collectively liberating all Black people and natural allies within this movement. That's all I got for y'all for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have Wafik from Vermonters for Justice in Palestine.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to tell you that the Palestinian struggle is parallel and similar to our Black sisters and brothers struggle on this country. And the enemy is the same if it is in the United States or in Israel. I have to tell you, when I watched the 8-9 minutes of the murder of George Floyd, I saw the Black history of 400 years on those 9 minutes. I saw a Black man on a shackle on the ground, squeezed out of his breath, of his humanity, oppressed. And I saw him, I saw ourselves, the Palestinian, on this position. And it is a lesson. With 8 minutes, we can see the history of our Black sisters and brothers on this country. Racism on this country, it is within the whites. It has a color. It is a disease, only white can carry it, but it can kill Blacks and browns. And to get rid of this disease, the question going to be not what our organization can do, which is building coalition with many of the beautiful organizations around you, from Racial Justice Alliance and the Coalition of Ethnic Study and Social Equity, that we are working to change the laws and take baby steps, small steps to change this states and its laws from the language of slavery on. But the question should be to all of you, the people are watching us here and they are white. What are you going to do after you are seeing what you are seeing? What's happening now is a Black uprising all over the country. The name of it is Intifada. It's an uprising. It's similar to what we have in occupied Palestine. It is not riot, and we shouldn't change the uprising name, because the moment you call it riot, they're going to blame the victim. This is the racist colonialist system will do for all of us. Solidarity.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to hear from Kina on behalf of the Peace and Justice Center.
Okay. Hello again. And I realized at the beginning that I didn't introduce myself. I just kind of started talking. It's kind of a habit of mine. So hi, I'm Kina Thorpe. I'm the Educational Program Manager at the Peace and Justice Center. Like I said earlier, we are a nonprofit organization doing work in the areas of racial justice, peace and human rights and nonviolence, and fair trade. And our main mission is to change the world through education by giving people the information that they need to hopefully get them to change their minds and their hearts and be able to bring that information back into their communities to enact change. So we host, well, normally we host workshops around the state. We also typically have our fair trade store down by the waterfront in Burlington. And we also have like our bi-weekly e-news, which goes out, which is like a compilation of things that are happening around the state, articles about relevant topics written by staff, interns, volunteers, other community members, people from other activist groups. So really we're just trying to kind of be a hub for sharing information about social justice movements that are happening around the state, and specifically uplifting those that are led by people of color. We also are really in recent years trying to reshift some of our programming to focus more on creating healing spaces for people of color. So we offer a POC affinity group, which I'm planning one, actually like 3 for sometimes in the coming weeks, so keep an eye out for that. But really just trying to not only educate white people about their role in racism, in white supremacy culture, but to also do some healing work and use the infrastructure that we have as a way to uphold and uplift people of color. So that has been something really special that I feel like we've been able to do. We also support other activist groups through our allied group program. We've had many different groups be a part of this program, including some groups on this call. Black Lives Matter, Greater Burlington is a former allied group. Loving Day Vermont is a current allied group, and we provide fiscal sponsorship, help with promotion of their events, and lots of stuff like that. So we're really focused on doing what we can with the structures that have been built and that were built primarily by white folks in the late 70s, early 80s, because that's kind of how our organization started, and being able to shift that to be something that really holds and honors and uplifts people of color. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Ways that you can get involved, obviously coming to events like this that we host, being part of the conversations that we hold, whether that's in our POC affinity groups, in our toxic whiteness discussion groups that we hold, and we'll also be holding one in the coming weeks. We also, like I said, we feature articles written by community members and other social justice activists in our e-news, on our blog, on our social media. So if there are ever times where your organization or your group is doing something that's really meaningful that you're wanting to get out there, please feel free to share. But really just wanting the organizations that are here to know that we are a place that you can utilize, but also letting the participants here know that we are a great place to turn to if you're wanting to know about things that are happening around the state, because we really like to try to get a pulse on all of the things that are happening, so that way we can do our best to connect people to other groups or organizations that are doing work that either we don't have the capacity to do, or that are just doing it better than we are, to be frank. So, yeah.
Thank you, Kina. Next, we're going to hear from Nicholas from Loving Day, Vermont.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Glass. I'm with Loving Day, Vermont. Me and my wife were co-founders of Loving Day, Vermont. Loving Day as a national organization is a global network of celebrations to honor the Supreme Court ruling, Loving v. Virginia, the legalization of interracial marriage in the United States in 1967. It's also an organization that focuses on a broader mission of fighting racial prejudice through education and multicultural building. Specifically in Vermont, we're here working to create spaces of affirmation for interracial, multicultural, multiracial couples, individuals, and families, along with supporting the right to love whoever you want. The organization in Vermont has been around since 2014. We've had a variety of different types of programming. Some things involving lectures. We've brought in authors from around the country and around Vermont who have written on the subject. We've had different meetups, different groups, We usually have a signature event on June 12th, around June 12th, the anniversary of the event. But we have expanded through learning that there is a community for this, that there are people in Vermont interested in this sort of community. We've expanded to year-round programming before COVID, COVID-19, but that is Loving Day Vermont in a nutshell. We are currently having events planned for the 12th this year as best we can. We're on Facebook as Loving Day VT, also on Instagram as Loving Day VT. But as the community grows, as we see need, perceive need, and have those conversations with other people who feel like they're connected to this, and even if they're not connected to this, they want to just promote us. We are always interested in more voices to see how to make this community what Vermont needs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nicholas. Next, we're going to hear from Ahsaf from the Vermont New Hampshire Lawyers Guild in Rise, Upper Valley.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Wait, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So let me just start my timer here. Yeah, so my name is Asman. I first want to thank the Peace and Justice Center for putting this together. I see we have 648 participants. That means 648 people who are ready to learn what they can do. So I'm pretty excited to be on this and to have been invited. So I'm looking at what's happening now in this country, and I'm thinking about the organizing that I do in the Upper Valley. So if you're in the Upper Valley, that's where I live. Try to connect with me. We've organized against the racism against immigrants, right, with ICE and Border Patrol. We've organized against policing, which we believe that the institution of police is a violent institution. We believe that prisons is a space of violence. And so what we're trying to do, and this is before these protests, right? People know, especially particularly brown and black bodies know that police are something to be feared, right? So it's brown bodies, it's black bodies, but also people in poverty who are targeted by police. And so what does that look like in the Upper Valley? And so what we're doing in the Upper Valley is trying to ensure that, one, white folks stop calling the police. We have to absolutely stop relying on police as the solutions to our societal problems. It's usually the first thing people go to, and we need to stop that. There are other ways. So there are communities that have figured out ways to solve their problems without going to the police, right? And so we're asking white people, stop calling the police. And if you want resources to find out what can you do versus calling the police, you can go to the NLG New Hampshire Facebook page and you can read some resources. It'll look very different for different communities, but find a different way so we're not relying on police, because for some people they're safe, but as we said, for brown and black and people in poverty, they're not safe. If you are in the Upper Valley, there is an issue that is very, I think is really important that we need to tackle. People are afraid to tackle it because there's this organization that does wonderful things. It is called The Haven. So it is an organization that provides resources, it provides shelter, food to people who are unhoused, people in poverty. So it's doing great things, but there's something that it's doing that is absolutely horrible, which is collaborating with the police department. So one of the things that they're doing is they're going out with the police department who are in plain clothes, and they're trying to talk to the people who are unhoused, right? And so we need that collaboration to stop, because again, brown, black, and people in poverty are the ones targeted by the police department. And so I don't have much time, but if you want more information, please connect with me. My email is newhampshire@nlg.org, or Asma Elhouni, which is my name, you'll find right next to my picture, @yahoo.com, and I can connect you to some other stuff that we're doing. But it's time to be brave. It's time to say that these institutions can't be reformed. We have to avoid them and stop using them. So no more prisons, no more police, jails, and no more Guantanamo Bay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we continue, just for our viewers on the Facebook live stream, just know we're not ignoring your questions. We're going to get to those tomorrow. And for everyone here, there's 500 people currently watching through the Facebook stream. So that's very amazing. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to Joanna. She's representing Showing Up for Racial Justice in Middlebury.
Hi, everyone. I'm very honored to be participating in this panel with all of these amazing activists who I have had the honor to work with a lot of you. So Showing Up for Racial Justice Middlebury has been around since 2015. We exist mostly to uplift and magnify the voices of a lot of these organizations that you're seeing here tonight. Also, though, to help white people start their process of dismantling that racism and that internalized white superiority that we all, if we're white, have. As Harmony said in the very beginning, you're either racist or recovering racist. We're all of that. As we go on a journey toward anti-racism, we start uncovering more and more. And I know for myself that that is hard to look at. And for white people, we're very conditioned to want to feel good all the time and to want to feel comfortable all the time. And it's not comfortable to look at that stuff. And that's why we're here to support you on that journey and help you. You know, if the platform that you're standing on is strong, then you can go into this work and you can feel that discomfort and you can make mistakes and you can know that it's not the end of the world if you make a mistake, that you can repair the harm and that you can learn how to really show up. That's in our name, Showing Up for Racial Justice. So we're learning how to show up and we're learning how to dismantle that toxic whiteness that we have inside of us and listen to what our Black brothers and sisters, neighbors and colleagues have been asking us, telling us for literally hundreds of years, the message that they are human and deserve to be treated as human, and white people have not been listening. And I am a little encouraged that our group that we usually I usually add 2 or 3 people a month to our Showing Up for Racial Justice Facebook group. And today I added like 11 people before I had breakfast. So there are a lot of white people in Vermont and around the whole country that are like, oh my God, racism. So, okay, you're late to the party, but we're really glad you're here. And there is plenty to do. So please connect with us and we're here to support you on your journey. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Now let's move on to Patricia, who will be representing Showing Up for Racial Justice in the Burlington area.
Hey everyone. So this is Showing Up for Racial Justice Take 2. I want to just thank the Peace and Justice Center and all the folks representing here and all the folks showing up. So we're part of a national network of groups and individuals that are working to undermine white supremacy and work towards racial justice. You know, Ta-Nehisi Coates was here a while back and said to white people, it is time to catch up and step up. The time is so totally now. And to that point, we've had a surge, no pun intended, of over 50 new people, just as you were saying, contact us just in the last week. So mission-wise, we provide opportunities for white people across the class spectrum to learn about racism and white supremacy, to skillfully engage other white people around these issues, and to be better prepared to take action. We call on our members to use their unearned racial advantage to responsibly contribute to local people of color-led racial justice organizations. And we strive to maintain accountability with these organizations. And you know, we're particularly open to and interested in working with people who may be early on in the waking up, as Joanna was saying, part. It's a gritty, hard work of what it means to be white in our society, the really deeply systemic nature of racism, to what our responsibilities are as white people, and how to engage and move forward into action that's skillful. And again, in other words, as Harmony said earlier, we hope to help white people become recovering racists. So that's a double R there. The past few years, we've focused on offering opportunities for white people to learn about white privilege and white supremacy two ways. We've offered book discussion groups. And most recently, we've been facilitating workshops offering strategies on how to have more constructive conversations with other white people about racism, conversation by conversation, and how we can move forward and build community. People in our really small core group having also engaged as individuals in locally led groups with people of color leadership. We don't have regular public meetings at this time, but we'll be offering some upcoming opportunities, so stay tuned for that. Our primary communication for now is through Facebook page, and we're also working on means for other people who don't use Facebook. And I know Peace and Justice Center, in addition to the many awesome things they're doing, is going to be sending out a list of information for all the organizations here. We really try to share information, as many people have said, to uplift people of color, to share articles and information about racism. And as SURJ Nashville, Tennessee says, our goal is not to produce good members of SURJ, but to train white people to engage well in multiracial organizing spaces and handle our own learning in a way that doesn't further burden people of color. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Next, we're going to hear from Alyssa from the Ethnic Studies Coalition.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thanks for organizing this. So I'm representing the Vermont Coalition for Ethnic and Social Equity in Schools. Our vision is about uplifting stories from people of color, Indigenous folks, disability, and LGBTQIA communities, and to organize to have these stories embedded in our school curriculum and policies throughout the state. In 2019, we passed Act 1, the Ethnic Studies Equity Advisory Working Group bill, to create a working group that is going to recommend state standards aligned with our vision to the Board of Education to hopefully transform our curriculum. I think what goes hand in hand with this policy change is we're working at the grassroots level to try to empower students, teachers, parents, and community members to help transform their schools locally. And I just want to name that the George Floyd murder is just one constellation point in a very vast, complicated system of systemic racism, and that education can be a valuable intervention point for transforming systemic racism. However, if we're complacent and aren't kind of actively acting towards racial justice, education has also historically been used as a tool to reproduce hierarchy, racism, and white supremacy culture, so it also has that potential. And we just want to kind of send a message to encourage everyone, especially parents and students and educators, to engage in racial justice organizing locally, where you can really have an impact in your local community, in your local school. Work to build relationships and do shared learning with aligned folks locally, and make sure to follow the lead of Black folks and people of color in terms of what needs to be changed. Some questions you can ask of your school and your district might include, does the district spend money on policing that could be spent on school support or school counselors? Does your district have an equity hiring policy or an equity director? That's something that you could advocate for. What is the teacher of color retention data? What types of racial justice professional development are our school staff engaged in? What kind of opportunities for learning are there? And then really looking at different data around discipline and assessment, and are there opportunity gaps for students of color? In terms of ways you can plug in, we're kind of planning and considering offering some teach-ins targeted towards parent, students, and teacher organizing, as well as affinity spaces for POC parents, students, and teachers. This year, we also kind of have plans in the works to create a grassroots participatory equity audit tool that we'll kind of share and train folks to use in their local communities to help hold their schools accountable. And if you'd like to be in touch, we're gonna send out a form, and I can also plop this in the chat, where you can fill out a very brief form to join our listserv. And our email will also go out. We definitely want to encourage anyone that's experiencing racial justice or other equity issues in their school to reach out to us directly, and we'll do what we can to help connect you with folks and help kind of help you organize locally. All right, thanks again.
Thank you, Alyssa. Okay, next we're going to hear from Bor Yang from the Human Rights Commission.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. My name again is Bor, and I am the Executive Director of the Vermont Human Rights Commission, which is a state agency in Vermont, and we handle investigations and litigation in 3 primary areas: housing. So if you're feeling discriminated in housing, either neighbor-on-neighbor harassment, or you're being evicted, or you're being harassed by your landlord, be it disability harassment, sexual harassment, racial harassment, whatever it might be, you have the right to ask for that to stop. That's the housing piece of it. We also handle all state government employment cases. So for anyone who works for the state, and they are being discriminated there, they can open an investigation at the Human Rights Commission. And we also handle all cases involving places of public accommodations. And that includes businesses and storefronts, but it also means hospitals, it also means schools, it also means prisons, and it also means roads. And so places of public accommodations is anything that is open to the general public. And that's how we end up also seeing a lot of police type cases at the Vermont Human Rights Commission. In addition to those types of investigations and litigation, we do a fair amount of teaching and training. We do a lot of legislative work. So that's the piece of it that is what my job is. I also want to talk a little bit today about George Floyd and sort of the personal impact that it has had on me, specifically because I am from South Minneapolis, and George Floyd was murdered in my neighborhood. And it really has had such a huge impact on me, not just because of where it was, but also because this week I did see that entire neighborhood burn up. And I have been so upset this week about all the people who have been talking about how this is the act of just the police, or that this is the act of a few rogue police officers who were not following police protocol. And I think it's very clear to all people here today who is listening that George Floyd was murdered because he was Black and because he was poor. And if we are appalled by what the police did that day, we should also be equally appalled that for whatever reason, there was a law in the books about arresting someone who is using a $20 counterfeit bill. That is a law against people who are poor. And we should be also appalled that this officer was ever there in the first place, because Amy Klobuchar, who is being vetted to be the Vice President of the United States, completely failed in her position to prosecute police officers during her entire tenure. We need to hold her accountable. So if we want to talk about how do we hold people accountable, we've got to start holding these public officials accountable. That's how we change the system. I have a lot of ideas. I know you have a lot of ideas too. My time is up, but I definitely want to engage in this discourse. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bor, and I really appreciate you bringing your emotions into the space. That was really powerful. Okay, next we're going to hear from Maria from Community Voices for Immigrant Rights.
Hi, my name's Maria. I'm a steering committee member for the group Community Voices for Immigrant Rights. We're a group of community members who want to support local and national efforts towards immigration justice. Right now, we work very closely with the Peace and Justice Center and Migrant Justice. This group started about a year ago in July. We helped plan the large protest in front of the ICE data center in Williston, protesting the conditions on the border in the ICE detention centers. Since then, our biggest project has been working in tandem with Migrant Justice for their No Mas Polimigra campaign. And that's a campaign to decrease the collaboration between ICE, Border Patrol, and police. So we were submitting with the help of City Council, submitting an amendment to their fair and impartial policing policy. And to do this, we held teach-ins at UVM. We created a video with CCTV. We did phone banking. We knocked door to door and talked to neighbors. And we had some rallies at City Council meetings, and we were able to get that amendment passed to the policy. Also thanks to Rise Upper Valley. And this is a campaign that's happening all over Vermont. So if you would like to decrease collaboration between ICE, Border Patrol, and police, we're having a webinar on June 10th so that you can start it in your own town and kind of spread this around so we can decrease police, the ways that police can intervene while we're trying to divest from that, from them. Right now, we are reaching out to other organizations to figure out how we can help them with what they're working on right now. So any organizations on this call we'll be reaching out to. And as for participants, if you are wanting to join Community Voices for Immigrant Rights, we have our bi-weekly Zoom meeting next Monday. Our best way to get a hold of us is on Facebook. And then, as you all heard, you will get more information about contacts tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to hear from Reverend Arnold on behalf of Justice for All, Racial Justice Alliance.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I represent the Vermont Justice for All, but I also should emphasize that the Racial Justice Alliance is actually a policy arm of Vermont Justice for All, what I often refer to as JUFA, Vermont Justice for All. What I hope we will take away from this meeting this evening is a need to form a statewide coalition led by communities and organizations and people of color to create a statewide vision that will address the situation, the concerns, the priorities of people of color that can also be translated on the regional and local level. Justice for All, through the policy arm of Vermont Racial Justice Alliance, has brought together a coalition of organizations, including Vermonters for Justice in Palestine, including the Vermont Center for Independent Living, the ACLU, Disabilities Rights Vermont, and SURJ. We were involved in helping to create a coalition called the Social Equity Caucus, which is a coalition of legislators and senators in the State House who would advocate for priorities that are represented within the people of color communities throughout the state. And what I would like to see happen from this gathering this evening is a desire to help strengthen this already statewide coalition with your efforts, with your local and community and regional efforts to create further agendas and visions and action plans for addressing the inequities that exist among people of color in this state, Black and brown people within the state. This is my hope. I recently wrote an article that has been published by several papers within the state really, I hope, addressing and expressing the concern that many people throughout the country, especially people of color and Black and brown people in this state, who feel taken for granted because we represent a small portion of the population. There is a tendency to ignore or just disregard our concerns. And this is one of the reasons why we feel that if anything is going to be effective towards change in this state, it has to be created and led by people of color with allies among white Vermonters to address the concerns and the priorities that we face here, with a sense that if the most marginalized and victimized and oppressed communities of this state are empowered, everyone will gain ultimately. And so this is my hope. And it is also my hope that we as a statewide organization will coalesce our energies and not only addressing concerns that affect us statewide, but also channeling those energies in strengthening the work that is going on within the regions and the localities of our state, so that we can elect officials, be they police officers, police chiefs, mayors, city council persons, select boards that reflect and embrace the agenda that people of color in this state advocate for. So that's what I'm hoping we will do.
Thank you, Reverend Arnold. Next, we have Sheila from the Root Social Justice Center.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sheila. I'm with the Root Social Justice Center. We are a nonprofit organization growing a movement for racial justice located in Brattleboro, Vermont, which is the southern part of the state. We are also an organization providing spaces for healing and connection, shifting resources into the hands of BIPOC people and racial justice work, and prioritizing and supporting the initiatives and leadership of the BIPOC communities. Currently, we have 4 to 5 major initiatives going on, and one of them is connection. In this pandemic, as well as being isolated as communities of color, connection is really important, especially in rural, predominantly white states such as Vermont. So we are continuing our programs online in this pandemic that have infinity programs, which are for BIPOC only, some of our programs, so that we can have safer spaces to come together, to connect, to build, and to create those relationships that we so desire and need. We are also focusing on healing, and healing is becoming a big component of our work. And through our healing, we have a healing committee, as well as establishing relationships with individual healers, both locally and around the state, as well as other allies such as the Susu Collective, which happens to be above us at the Root Social Justice Center. And these are BIPOC healing entities or organizations that are really focusing their healings on the BIPOC community. We are also focusing on support for our BIPOC and QTPOC communities. We currently have a mutual aid supportive network, which I know that many people around the state are providing mutual aid during this COVID pandemic. We at the Root have chosen to specifically focus our mutual aid, prioritizing the BIPOC community needs. We've started with the BIPOC local community of the Root, then in our larger community of Brattleboro and the surrounding area, and then we are also touching on our allies and individuals across the state that represent our BIPOC community. But we're not just representing or meeting the needs of BIPOC community, we're also meeting the needs of those white co-conspirators and allies who are along us and sitting with us and standing with us along the way to make sure that we can support them so they can continue to support us. In addition to our mutual aid supportive network, we are able to not only directly see what the needs are of our individuals of BIPOC community, but we're also able to gain what gifts we have, because we don't just have needs, we also have gifts to offer as well. So we are doing a lot of mutual aid by shifting those resources and providing resources for BIPOC community to give back to BIPOC community, and for white folks and allies to be able to step in and to offer their gifts as they can. We are also working with our allies, which is Lost River Racial Justice, which is an extended affiliation of some of the SURJ chapters that you mentioned here today. Our white allies and co-conspirators work directly with us, and we work in a caucus model such as Black Lives Matter Greater Burlington, where we have our BIPOC caucus and we have our white allied caucus as well. And together, as well as separately, we work on education, healing, accountability directly to communities of color, mobilizing an organization, and the ability to take action. So we are currently doing that separately, and we are also doing that together. And one of the ways that we come together is through our racial justice organizing meetings that happen, our leadership meetings that happen, which are multiracial meetings. And the other ways that those things happen for our BIPOC community is by allowing us to have infinity spaces for both education, healing, organizing, and fun. And so we currently have all those programs still going, and they're online, and we're currently still creating and continuing to support the direct needs of BIPOC communities and our co-conspirators and allies. You can get involved by participating in our programs, donating to our organization, or volunteering, and you can reach us at the Root Social Justice Center on our Facebook, or the rootsocialjusticecenter.org for our email address, or on the web. Currently, we are redoing our website, so please email us if there is some way that you would like to get involved. And I thank you to the Peace and Justice Center and to all of the organizations on here for being here today.
Thank you. And lastly, we are going to hear from State Representative Deanna Gonzalez.
Hello all. I represent Winooski and a bit of Burlington, and I am very proud to be part of the 150 state representatives and 180 total legislators across including the 30 state senators. And so I come here to talk about what are the different pieces that you all can advocate for. When we think about police brutality and we think about Black Lives Matter specifically in those intersections, a lot of times we can think about the justice reform. So there's a couple things that we have active that are in the State House, and we are meeting as a legislature right now. We're meeting virtually, and so while these bills are not moving, as we say in the State House, it is possible for people to advocate for them and for us to be able to pick them up. And so there's a justice reinvestment bill from the Senate, S338, that is something that could really look at the way that we do justice in Vermont and make it more equitable. And so that's something to look up and something to advocate for your work. I see a comment here that Dave Zeckman saying that I'm not running again. I'm not. I've been very excited to serve for 6 years and very excited for the people that are running behind me, which I'll talk about in a second. You can also, H808 is one of two bills that are about use of force of police. And so these are two things that you can call your legislators and email your legislators and advocate for these. So again, we are doing very limited work, and this is work that we need to get picked up and we need to move forward. When we also think about policy work on the state level that will improve the lives for Black folks and other people of color, we need to look at housing, we need to look at healthcare, we need to look at economics. And we know that Black folks specifically are get the short end of the stick. I wish I had a better phrase in the moment, and I don't. And so right now we are dealing with federal funds that, while the federal funds, the CARES Act really give a lot of money to a lot of rich people, there are some that are coming down to us at the smaller level. And so as a state, we are looking at how to use the CARES money. So that means about housing, that means about healthcare, that means about economics. And so there are bills that we're working on, and right now it's an omnibus bill that the governor has put forward. And in this, it'll be hard to change what the governor says because it's packaged in an omnibus bill. So one possibility that you could do is you could reach out to your legislators and see if we can pull those pieces apart to really make it more equitable. Because right now, those economic pieces are not benefiting most of us, and certainly not benefiting the most vulnerable amongst us. And African Americans in our state, we know, are disproportionately impacted by economics. And so that's one way that you can do that. Also looking at elections are coming up. Everybody has filed, so you can work on people's elections. There were some questions about, I live in this place or I live in that place. Only Burlington or Chittenden County is where things are happening. So look at who's running and join their campaigns and push forward. So Reverend Thomas talked about electing people on all levels. That means that you can join campaigns and you can make it happen for people at all the levels. So we have the Lieutenant Governor who's running for governor right now on this call watching so that he can learn. So folks like him, folks like other people who are really invested are the people that we need to elect. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, that concludes the introductions from our panelists. We're now going to move on to our Q&A portion of our time together. Our first question today is for Asma. Is there a prison abolition movement in VT? And also, what happens if there's no police, if there's a mass shooting or other dramatic event?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm glad somebody asked that, because on my name there it says New Hampshire Lawyers Guild, but actually I'm working very closely with Vermont Lawyers Guild, so we're working together. And so yes, we are organizing around prison abolition both in Vermont and New Hampshire. So yeah, so this idea of prison abolition, and right away people are like, oh, what if? And so I think the first thing that needs to happen is education. Communities are currently doing that. They are not calling the police. Communities have found ways to address problems without using cages, because realistically, look what has happened in our country. Like, we have to face the fact that prisons are not working. They're trying to sell us this idea that if we throw people behind cages, we're fixing our problems. Our problems are still there, and removing the fact that it's our society that is causing these problems. And there's a reason why we just want to throw them behind cages. We're not actually holding the people that we need to hold responsible for those issues. And so I highly, highly recommend, I'm going to recommend a book so that you can read, because I know people are like, oh my God, what about the rapists and what about the murderers? And it's like, literally those people are already walking amongst us. The biggest rapists are in the Congress and the White House. They're walking amongst us, right? The biggest murderers, I mean, I'm sorry, like the military, they're amongst us already. So like, if you're gonna be afraid, fear now, because they're already out here versus behind the people that you think are dangerous that are behind cages, which again, violence breeds violence. That is a violent place. When we're talking about cages, people are not, it's basically this whole idea that this country keeps doing to people, which is once somebody makes a mistake, they're disposable. There's no chance to get better, right? And it's oftentimes, it's the people in poverty, it's the Black and brown folks. Those are the people that wind up sentenced, and those are the people that are wind up behind bars most of the time. So so all I'm gonna say is I recommend read what it looks like. It looks different in every community. I'm not gonna tell you like I have the answers, I don't, but like there are communities that figured out what works for them. So there's a great book by Angela Davis called Are Prisons Obsolete? Read it. It is not okay. She literally writes a quote in that book. She's like, in 1960 something, the prison population was 250,000. And she said, if you told me today that the prison population would be what it is today, I would say there's just no way it would blow up, because there'd be enough resistance, even though we know, she knows this is a racist country, but there would be enough resistance to say, no way would we allow it to get to where it is today. And so I highly recommend read, go to the NLG New Hampshire. I know it's New Hampshire, but honestly, most of our organizing is in Vermont. I'm just gonna tell you. But go to our Facebook site and look at the different resources that we have up there. And almost every day I'm gonna put a new kind of like resource if you wanna go to it and read to find out what our community is doing, right? Because prisons are not the solution. Police are not the solution. We have the solution, guys, and we got to stop relying on police and prisons to solve our problems, because they're not. They're making our society worse.
Hello, everyone. Okay. Our next question is going to be for Reverend Arnold. And also, before we continue with the Q&A, if we could just keep the answers between like 3 to 5 minutes, just so we can fit everything in. Okay, for Reverend Arnold, is Justice for All connected to the Poor People's Campaign? And is anyone in Vermont working with them?
Yes, the Justice for All is connected to every organization that is trying to dismantle racism. So yes, it is connected to the Poor People's Campaign. It's connected to the NAACP in Rutland, as well as in Windsor County, in Brattleboro area. We are, but our emphasis right now is trying to connect the national ties with the state of Vermont, and specifically addressing the concerns and the priorities of as it relates to people of color within this state. You'll find that a lot of the concerns that are related to the Poor People's Campaign directly tie in with issues of criminal justice, with issues of reparations here among Black people within this state and people of color within this state, and we have bills sent in the House as well as the Senate to really affect those kind of changes within the state. Already within the state, the reparations bill, Act 54, that really helped to bring Susanna Davis, the Director of Racial Equity, to the state, and also to bring a Director of Racial Equity to the city of Burlington. The Vermont Racial Justice Alliance and Justice for All were directly behind those initiatives and continue to influence House representatives and senators within our state to get behind those initiatives to affect change. And the only way we're going to strengthen our cause is for the various regional organizations that are represented in this room, among others, to coalesce within a statewide umbrella of alliances to strengthen this cause. And so I'm really urging and hoping that we can do that.
Thank you for your answer, Reverend. Next, Kina, we have multiple questions about how to talk about racism, specifically how to show support to people of color as a white person, and also how to talk to white family members.
Yeah, so I mean, that in itself is an entire webinar, but to kind of be a little succinct, I guess the first place of where to start with, you know, being a good white ally is just to listen, to ask questions and listen to really learn something, not just to learn new information so you can pwn other white people about how woke you are in comparison to them, but to actually learn and grow for yourself. Because a lot of times, especially in Vermont, where there is this this perception of progressivism and non-racism, right? That like it's so easy to point the finger at other white people and point out the racism that, I almost said we, you know, that white people see in other white people rather than seeing it in themselves. So I think that is the first place to start, because you can't address racism in other people in your community. You can't have real conversations with your family members, especially your really difficult family members, if you first don't do it for yourself. So it really starts with self-education and doing what you need to do to educate yourself and not depend on the people of color around you. because, you know, white people in Vermont don't really have a lot of friends of color, but you can bet that the people of color in Vermont got a lot of white friends because there's a lot of white people. So, you know, we get tired of having to have conversations about race and racism all the time and having to explain these things. So really taking it upon yourself to do what you need to do to teach yourself. But when the conversations do come up, to really take the opportunity to sit and listen and learn something from that, and to take the lead from people of color, and to not make assumptions about what they need or what we need, because you're never going to be effective in being an ally if you just make assumptions about what people need. And sometimes what people need is not going to be what you want to give. It's going to be hard. Sometimes it might be, I need to be away from you, and that might be hard to hear. But it's about respecting that and doing it because you know it's the right thing to do. But I think that really that's what it comes down to, is starting with yourself, because once you can be real with yourself about where you are, it makes it a lot easier to have those conversations with other people, specifically with other people who might not view themselves as being racist, which is, you know, the case a lot in Vermont. And being able to come from a place of empathy and understanding, rather than trying to out-woke other white people, is going to be, you're going to be much more effective in being able to make meaningful change in a way that is going to be long lasting and go beyond the surface level. So I really encourage people to continue to come to events like this, where you have the opportunity to hear about different groups and organizations that are doing this work. Go to workshops, right? Like, push yourself out of your comfort zone to go be in community with other white people and have these really difficult conversations. And know that it's okay to be in spaces with other white people and have these conversations, and that's needed. And that will help you to process in a way where you aren't harming people of color by expecting them to lend you their ear. So, you know, Peace and Justice Center, we're always, you know, hosting programs. We have our toxic whiteness discussion group. That's a great place to start. We have Seeing and Disrupting Racism, which talks all about white fragility. That's a great place to start. You know, like, just seek things out, right? Don't wait for things to come to you. Read books. Like, the internet exists. There's never a reason to sit around and act like there's no next steps, because we have the internet where you can find all the resources you'll ever need, right? So it's just about being proactive rather than reactive, and to really put the onus on yourself to do the work, rather than expecting the people of color around you to push you to do that, because that is unhealthy for you, and it's definitely really unhealthy for the people of color in your lives.
Thank you. Our next question is for Nicholas. What resources can you offer interracial families?
So by the very nature of Loving Day Vermont, we are here to be a resource. We are actively expanding events. We are always looking for people who want to be committee members to spread their ideas, what they're thinking about, what they want to space for interracial families in Vermont. We do have an event on the 12th this year. It is going to be, you can check it out on Facebook. That's one thing we're doing. But we actively have events throughout the year, so that just to have a community for kids, for adults, for anybody who is tied to this community. And we're always looking for new ideas. So we have year-round events, and sound a little redundant, but we are always actively looking for more people to be a part of our committee, even if that's not what you're wanting to sign up for. We also have just volunteers for different events, and just simply like one of our events that we've been regularly doing for the last 5 years is just having kids hang out together who don't know if there are people, didn't know there are other kids like them in Vermont. Couples, knowing, just having that community, knowing like, hey, there are other people like us in Vermont. And they can, and especially if you're new to Vermont, even if you're not new to Vermont, you can be in a pocket in Vermont and not know there are other people like you in Vermont. That's just the nature of Vermont. Just knowing, having someone you can talk to, like, hey, I had this relationship issue with my parents, like they didn't understand. I now have another person who may have had that exact shared experience in Vermont that I can talk to that I never knew existed in the state. And that's kind of how we started 2014. Me and my wife moved here and had no idea there were other people of color or people who were in interracial marriages. We saw people, but it's kind of awkward just to roll up on somebody and say, hey, I think you're in an interracial relationship. You want to talk? It's kind of weird. So this kind of grew into a space, and now it's 6 years of people making these connections, knowing who's around. We have allies who are outside. We have people who are helping us right now and are part of Loving Day of Vermont that aren't in interracial couples, Black couples, white couples, all kinds of couples are just like, we understand the space that is needed for an organization like Loving Day of Vermont in a very white place. So look up our events, look up our website. Join committee if you want to do that, or if you just want to know we're here, come to our events, reach out to us. We're always available to anyone who just wants to even just talk.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. Unfortunately, everyone, that's all the time we have. We appreciate all the questions you sent in, and it's really been an honor to be a part of something so special with you all. Thank you.
Is it gonna hop over? Oh, okay. It did. It hopped over. Okay. Well, yeah. Like Jayna said, we are all out of time, but wanted to thank everybody for coming. We will be sending out a list that has all of the information for the all of the different organizations that were represented on the panel. So you should be getting that in your email if you registered. If you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, we will share the link to that document on our Facebook. We'll post it in the event, so you can look for it there if you're wanting to get in touch with the organizations that were represented here today. But yeah, thank you all again so much for all of your time. Sorry we couldn't get to all of your questions, and again, sorry to the folks on Facebook that we couldn't get to your questions. But thankfully, you're able to get in touch with all of the different organizations that you're wanting to ask these questions to anyway, so you don't even need us. But yeah, if you have any other questions or anything like that, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at the Peace and Justice Center. We're always more than happy to talk. Yeah, I think that that's all that we got. Thank you so much for coming, and I really hope that you enjoyed this event. And thank you again to all of our amazing panelists.